I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I thought I might be, for that's clear anybody to see. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not.
Welcome to the BrainsMatter podcast. This is episode 6 for the 21st of November 2006. I'm the ordinary guy. Now I bring you stories on science, curiosities, knowledge, and anything else that's interesting. There's been an expansion of places where this podcast is being listened to. So far, the stats have shown Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, England, Ireland, the Netherlands, Mexico, Japan, Spain, even Argentina, Thailand, the Republic of Korea, Indonesia, and China. If you're listening to this and I haven't mentioned your country, please drop me a line. I'll give you the contact details at the end of the show. Time for a bit of chemistry, or perhaps a bit of alchemy. Many listeners would have seen the movie Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone when it came out several years ago. What is the Philosopher's Stone? The Philosopher's Stone was the name of a substance believed by medieval alchemists to have the power to change simple metals into gold or silver. It was also believed to have the power to prolong life and cure diseases and injuries. By attempting to find it, alchemists discovered several other chemical substances, but not, of course, the fictitious Philosopher's Stone. Rumour has it that the movie Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was renamed Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for the American market because it was believed that the American movie studios considered the concept and legend of the Philosopher's Stone as being too complex for American audiences. It's a shame, and quite silly really. A Sorcerer's Stone makes no sense at all, especially once you realise what the point of the Philosopher's Stone was. Speaking of chemistry, have you ever wondered why some elements have symbols that seem to bear absolutely no resemblance to their name? For example, the symbol for hydrogen is H. That makes sense, right? H for hydrogen. Then helium is He, which are the first two letters of the word. Oxygen is O, carbon is C, nitrogen is N. It all makes sense. But what about lead? That's Pb. What does Pb have to do with lead? Well, that's because not all the names are English names. Many names were originally Latin. Let's have a look at a few of them and their symbol, and what their original name was, which gives a hint to the origin of their chemical symbol. Antimony's symbol is Sb. This comes from the original name of stibium, Sb. Copper's symbol is Cu. This comes from cuprum. Gold's symbol, which many of you will already know, is Au. This comes from aurum. Maybe they consider gold to have a bit of an aura around it. Iron's symbol is Fe. This comes from ferrum. I'm sure many of you have heard of ferrous oxide, which is the complicated term for rust. Lead's symbol, as I mentioned just before, is Pb. This comes from plumbum, and it also gave plumbing its name because in the old days they used to use lead pipes, until they realised that it caused lead poisoning. Mercury's symbol is Hc. This comes from hydrogyrum. Potassium's symbol is Ka. This comes from kalium. Silver's symbol is Ag. This comes from argentum, and no, it wasn't referring to Argentina. Sodium symbol is Na. This comes from natrium. Tin symbol is Sn. This comes from stannum. And tungsten symbol is W. This comes from wolfram. Sounds like an element favoured by lycanthropes or werewolves. So now you know all that, you can go amaze all of your friends and family with your newfound knowledge. And now it's time for today's brain teaser. What was the name of the Wright brothers' plane? I'll give you the answer to the brain teaser later in the show. Many of you will know that the weekend held the G20 economic meeting in Melbourne, Australia. In fact, it happened right across the road from where I work. Security around the G20 conference was so tight that they had police all over the place and security guards all over our office building. So what is G20? The G20 brings together those responsible for running the world's 20 biggest economies, and this accounts for 85% of the global output and 2/3 of the world's people. The world's key finance ministers and central bank governors met at the G20 conference to discuss the world economy. So who are amongst the G20? And I'll list them right now. It includes Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, the UK, the USA, and the European Union. And so what was among the agenda for the G20 conference? Well, one of the main things they talked about, or maybe not one of the main things, but one of the things they did talk about, was global warming and the Stern Report on climate change. They seem to be concerned about this because it impacts future energy prices. As I've mentioned in previous podcasts, economists and politicians only seem to be interested in the world around us and what the rest of humanity is concerned about when it comes down to some kind of monetary value. The Stern Report claims that the global economy would shrink by 20% if nothing was done, and we'd spend 4 to 5 times as much trying to fix the problem compared to if we actually put the time, money and effort into preventing the problem in the first place. As everybody knows, the prevention is better than the cure. And the Stern Report comes from Sir Nicholas Stern, who is an economist. Imagine what the report would have said if a scientist or a climatologist with a solid background in the area wrote it. The other interesting thing to note is that a lot of people protested the G20 conference for various reasons, including charity organisations. At the same time that the G20 conference was being held, the Make Poverty History concert was held on the other side of town. They actually had a website, or still have a website, at makepovertyhistory.com.au, and the concert featured artists such as Eskimo Joe, Evermore, the John Butler Trio, U2 and Pearl Jam. According to Oxfam International, during the 3 days of the G20 meeting, 60,000 children would have died from poverty, 2,800 women would have died during pregnancy or childbirth, and 16,000 people would have died from HIV and AIDS. All of these are related to extreme levels of poverty, so the hope is that the economic superpowers will actually do something to help those less fortunate. for something just a little bit different, I'm going to tell you about a concert I went to on the weekend. I'm not just going to make it a concert review, but in keeping with the science, curiosities and general knowledge theme of the BrainsMatter podcast, I will intersperse it with a few facts and figures here and there. So, on Sunday evening, I actually went to the Telstra Dome to see the second Melbourne U2 concert, which is also going to be the last one of the Vertigo tour. U2 were originally planning to play the concerts in Australia in March, but they were postponed due to an illness to guitarist Dave Evans' daughter. The crowds were absolutely massive, matched only by the South Africa versus Australia one-day cricket series I'd been to a few years ago. The concert started off loud, but a bit staid in my view. But about half an hour in, things started to really ramp up. They played Lay Down Your Guns, with a commentary about the conflicts that were happening around the world, and then followed that up with the seminal U2 song, Sunday Bloody Sunday. Those of you who know this song know it's about the 26th of January 1972 Londonderry incident, where 26 civil rights protesters were shot and killed, several of those in the back, by members of the British Parachute Regiment. A couple of the protesters were actually run down by army vehicles, and witnesses claim that those who were shot were all unarmed. The British government has held 2 investigations into the incident, the first clearing anyone of any wrongdoing, which isn't surprising, given that governments use royal commissions and inquiries to conclude whatever they want it to. Just ask the scriptwriters of Yes Minister. The second inquiry, which was started in 1998, the hearings finished in 2004, and in 2006, it still hasn't made a public conclusion yet, and it's 8 years later. It's always been one of their most political songs, and in the old days they used to always talk about the Bloody Sunday killings, but this time Bono mentioned the state of world politics where, in his words, the sons of Abraham were all fighting each other all over ideals that didn't make sense. The background screen unfurled a big emblem that said coexist, with a C shaped like the Muslim crescent, the X being represented by the Star of David, and the T as the Christian cross. From this point onwards, the concert picked up, as they followed this up with a pounding version of Bullet the Blue Sky, with F-16 warplanes showing on the screen behind them. The following song wasn't actually a U2 song, but a song by Bono and The Edge's alter ego band, Passengers, and the song was Miss Sarajevo, which originally featured Luciano Pavarotti. Unfortunately, Pavarotti wasn't there, and I was wondering who would sing the opera parts. It was actually Bono, whose voice isn't a touch on the strength of Pavarotti, but he did himself proud. The song was interspersed with articles from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They only had the first 6, but the crowd cheered as each one came up. You'd think they'd never seen them before. Those of you who haven't read or seen the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I've got the first 6 here for you. Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 2. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, colour, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. Furthermore, no distinctions shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing or under any other limitation of sovereignty. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty and security of person. Article 4. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 6. Everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Considering the band had been talking to the press a lot about the US and their treatment of David Hicks, it was all the more meaningful. They then finished up with some well-known tracks. At one point when the stadium went dark, they asked everyone to switch on their mobile phone and wave it about. It looked just like the night sky with points of twinkling light as everyone looked around themselves. The band even referred to that likeness, saying that they could see the solar system and Earth within the crowd. The funny thing about U2 crowds is that you can't stereotype them. Adults, kids, couples, families, pregnant women. The band have been around for 29 years now, so they were all there, from the grey-haired to the teens, and most of the teens weren't even born during the band's heyday. Now it's time for the answer to today's brain teaser. Did you know the name of the Wright brothers' plane? It was called the Flyer. The Flyer was made of wood and fabric and was built as a biplane, which means it had two parallel wings. Think of the planes used in World War I, or from an old movie like Those Magnificent Men in Their Flying Machines, and try to do that without singing the song. The plane was originally used as a glider by the brothers, and it measured 12 metres from wingtip to wingtip. For their inaugural flight, Wilbur and Orville installed a 4-cylinder petrol engine to the plane and attached 2 propellers which they designed themselves. On the 17th of December 1903 at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina, Orville Wright made his historic first flight in an engine-powered aircraft that was heavier than air. He flew 37 metres, and this took 12 seconds. The brothers made 3 more flights that day, and Wilbur managed to achieve the longest flight of the day, which was only fair since Orville got the first flight, and his flight was 260 metres and took 59 seconds. So what's been happening in the world of knowledge lately? Well, according to a recent report in Wired.com, George W. Bush actively tried to downplay or ignore scientific research into global warming and climate change to the extent of censoring their results. 2 federal agencies in the US are investigating this and will attempt to, according to a Senator Frank Lautenberg, uncover internal documents and agency correspondence that may expose widespread misconduct. Taxpayers do not fund scientific research, so the Bush White House can alter it, he said. Amongst research that were allegedly being muzzled, aside from the research into climate change, were items such as the Big Bang, the linkage of global warming to increased hurricanes, and other areas which seem to be in conflict with the beliefs of those in power. There's been a long-necked sea monster found in Montana. No, it's not the Loch Ness Monster, but a plesiosaur, believed to be about 70 million years old. The neck of this creature is so long that the neck itself has 70 vertebrae in it. The plesiosaur was a sea reptile that lived during the lifetime of the dinosaurs, and I'll have a link to the story in the show notes. I'm sure plenty of you have argued about what caused the end of the dinosaurs, and perhaps even wondered if something like that could happen again and cause the extinction of the human species. Well, it turns out that it might not have been a single incident that caused the mass extinctions. So you don't have to wonder about whether it was an asteroid hitting the Earth, volcanoes, or something else. It may have actually been a combination of them all. Plant fossil expert Nan Arens explained in an article on Discovery.com that if certain species were already vulnerable when a big event happened, a combination of catastrophes would be far more likely to cause their extinctions. She tested the theory with an undergrad student, Ian West, and compared meteor impacts, volcanic eruptions, neither happening and both happening, and compared the results. It turned out that experimentally, the extinction rates were very similar for meteor impacts, or volcanic eruptions, or even neither. But it turned out that high extinction rates occurred when both occurred simultaneously. And here's a story that will warm the heart of many a chocolate addict around the world. Researchers have found that eating small amounts of dark chocolate reduces the risk of getting blood clots. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University in the US studied 139 chocoholics and discovered that the platelets in the blood of these chocoholics took longer to clump together than for normal people. Professor Diane Becker said that chemicals in the cocoa beans have the same biochemical properties as that of aspirin. Although, I don't think that means that the next time you get a headache, you should reach for a block of your favourite chocolate bar. I bet you have meters and meters of wires coming out from behind your TV and stereo sets, and if you have got a big cabinet, you'll know how difficult it is to change any of the components if you buy something new. It means tracing the power cords and cables, and you always get into a big tangle. Well, this may be something of the past, for power cords anyway. Imagine being able to recharge your laptop or your mobile phone in exactly the same way that you can wirelessly surf the web. At the Industrial Physics Forum in San Francisco, Marin Soljacic from MIT spoke about some research he was involved in that allows for transferring energy wirelessly. It uses the physical phenomenon of induction, the same philosophy behind electromagnets and transformers. It's not a new idea. Nikola Tesla worked on the idea over 100 years ago, but wasn't able to develop it with the technology he had at the time. From the MIT research, the way it would work would be that a power transmitter would fill the space around it with what the MIT researchers called a non-radiative electromagnetic field, which means that the energy wouldn't ripple away as electromagnetic waves. And then the energy would be picked up by devices that are specifically designed to pick up the resonance of that field. One advantage of this system is that the energy not picked up by a receiver is reabsorbed into the transmitter, which minimizes a loss of energy. It also apparently doesn't need direct line of sight, which is the norm for general electromagnetic energy. The device at this stage would need to be within a couple of meters of the transmitter, but still, you could possibly say goodbye to the clutter of wires you have in your home. There is stuff in the universe that we can't see, but it's there, really. I'm not talking about ghosts, but about dark matter. Many astrophysicists have been working on trying to detect dark matter over the years, and it's believed that dark matter makes up around 95% of all the matter in the universe, which is an astounding amount when you think about it. So perhaps we can't see it, but we're assured it really is there. It's believed that dark matter, or dark energy, has helped fuel the expansion of the universe. Einstein's equations predicted the existence of dark matter, and if not for the fact that this dark matter exists, the universe would possibly implode upon itself due to the force of gravity pulling inward on everything. this information is very different to a paper called, get ready for this, General Relativity Resolves Galactic Rotation Without Exotic Dark Matter by Cooper, Stock and Tiu from the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Victoria in Canada. And if I read it right, it concluded that the general relativity, coupled with an understanding of weak gravitational fields, showed experimentally by studying 4 particular galaxies, which were the Milky Way, NGC 3031, NGC 3198 and NGC 7331, that the equations relating to rotational curves, angular velocity and density, that apparently there was no need for dark matter to explain further acceleration in the expansion of the universe. So 2 totally conflicting views there. So this is a topic I'll look into more for a future show, but in the meantime, you can read a story on dark matter on the BBC website in the show notes on the BrainsMatter website. I've decided to add to the website links to stories of interest in between the podcasts as well. There's just so much happening in the world of knowledge that if I was to report on them all, the show would take hours to complete and for you guys to listen to, and you don't want to listen to me droning on for longer than I normally do. So if you head to the website, you can see the posts there. If you just want the podcasts, you can get them through your podcatching software, and the easiest way is through iTunes. Or if you just want to look at the podcasts on the website, I have a link on the right hand side now called Podcast. Just click on that and it will display only the entries which are associated to the podcast episodes themselves. Click on the title and you'll get each individual show. That way you won't have to wade through all the other links that I've posted up. If you have any problems, just drop me an email and let me know. I do have some interviews that I'm organising with several people, and those people are a lot smarter than I am. I just need to sort out details around how I'll actually interview them. But once I get that figured out, I'll interview them and bring those interviews for you to listen to. Thank you once again for listening to the BrainsMatter podcast for the 21st of November 2006. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions, please drop me an email at mail@brainsmatter.com or leave a comment on the website at www.brainsmatter.com. Let me know where on the globe you live and how you found the podcast. Music on today's show comes courtesy of PodSafe Audio, apart from the Magenta song, which comes from carview.org. And you can find the podcast by doing a search within iTunes or by subscribing manually by clicking on one of the links on the website. Please leave comments and vote for the podcast in iTunes and Podcast Alley. I'll leave you with a quote from Carl Becker. The significance of man is that he is insignificant and is aware of it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Bye for now.
I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I thought I might be, for that's clear anybody to see. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I clever I would be. I'm not half as clever as me.